because there's a lot of noise in the space, there's a lot of gurus online, and it can be hard to differentiate between what's real and what's not. They know that LLMs can help them and can grant efficiencies to their company, but they're just not quite sure exactly how they can leverage AI. There's pressures from clients and there's a fear of being left behind if they don't act soon. How can we help you deliver better quality and more deliverables to your clients without having to hire more staff? It's often the case that AI and these AI strategy reviews are the catalyst for us mapping out these processes, these workflows, these operations, and finding out that actually you're re-entering between Excel, your project management system, your CRM, your invoicing system, which is killing hours each week. And it's not solely focused on AI, but looking across the board as to where AI and automation as a whole can increase your operational efficiency and save the company time.
Thank you very much. Okay. Well, firstly, thank you so much for attending. I appreciate it's the end of term. You guys are very busy, so really appreciate you taking the time. The people who have turned up to our weekly events also really appreciate you being such active members of the Claude Builder Club community. So 2 housekeeping things, first of all. Number 1, in order to get Claude Pro and the credits, you have to do a check-in form, but we're going to do that at the end of the event so we can get into the speakers as soon as possible. And number 2, we're going to go to a bar afterwards, and it'll be great to see you guys and just have a chat. So without further ado, let me hand it over to our 2 amazing speakers who will talk about how they're using Claude in their business. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob, and thank you, Oxford University, for inviting us here today. So we're going to be talking through how we've been using AI in practice, implementing this for consultancy firms. Now, before we get started today, there's a few discussions that we've got throughout the presentation. And as we go through those, we've got a microphone here that we'd like to pass around. Just a heads up that you will be videoed if you give a response, but please do use the mic so that it gets picked up by the videographers. So let's get started. So as an outline for the agenda for today, we're going to touch on briefly a bit of context about who we are and how we got to where we are today. We're then going to dive into practically what our service offering is and how we've been supporting companies recently before transitioning in to the focus for today on risk and governance, and practically what risks companies are looking at and being aware of when implementing these technologies. We're then going to move over more towards the macro trends of AI and where we're headed towards AGI, before then giving you a brief demo of our OpenClaw instance, which we got set up this week, highlighting some of those risks, and then concluding for a motion for the day where we'll go around the room, get some agreements, some disagreements, and share some perspectives. Finally, we'll conclude with a question and answer session. So any questions you may have for us about how we're using these tools and how we're supporting companies, you'll have the opportunity to ask at the end. So who are we? I've known Hugh for way too long. I think we first met when we were 12 years old, sat at the back of a maths classroom at the Cotswold School. Back then, we were bonding over video games, Modern Warfare 2, for any of you video game enthusiasts out there. Fast forward to the end of our school careers, and we both went and took very different routes. Hugh went and got his undergraduate at the University of Leeds studying physics before completing his master's in software engineering, whilst I went and got my undergraduate at the University of Exeter reading law. Now, I then went into the corporate world of work for a couple of years, and in December 2024, handed in my notice. In February 2025, we came together to start helping companies implement the efficiencies offered by AI. And fast forward to where we are today, we work with specialist and boutique consulting firms between 20 and 200 employees to help them differentiate their offering and increase delivery capacity without increasing headcount through AI and smart automation. So our core mission and value proposition, what is it that we actually do? We are on a mission to help consultancy teams work smarter, scale faster, and deliver greater value through the practical application of safe and secure AI and automation. we work alongside specialist consulting firms mainly in two manners. Firstly, to help them increase delivery capacity without having to hire additional staff. And secondly, to help them differentiate their offering in crowded marketplaces. And we'll dive into this a little bit more later, but this is really pivoting on the software development side of things and how you can use these tools like Claude Code and Cursor to develop software in a fraction of the time and a fraction of the cost as you could historically. Now, with implementation, of course, governance and control is a big focus for these companies with the risks associated with implementation.
So these are some of the clients that we've been working with over the past year. And I want to point your attention to the top left, which is the Consultancy Growth Network. This is a really special client for me and Rupert because this was our first ever client. And back then, Rupert was on the dialer, on doing cold calls, trying to sell our AI proposal generators and our AI WhatsApp agents. And he came to me saying, Hugh, I finally got you a good project. It's like, great. Said, problem is, deadline's in 2 weeks. So I was actually doing my master's at the time. I was in my dissertation. So I quickly ran to the shop, bought some Red Bull, and prepared myself for a lot of long nights in the coming weeks. However, we got there in the end, and it led to us growing to where we are today.
And on screen, you can see a number of the bigger companies that we're continuing to work with today. Namely, you've got Sladen Consulting at the top there, strategy and management consulting firm. You've got Hillbreak Consulting at the top right here, an ESG strategy consulting firm who work with the biggest asset managers in the UK, namely CBRE, Royal Holloway. And then you've got the Litmus Partnership, Procurement Partners, just to name a few of the clients that we're working with currently.
So what do our clients say about us? Well, in the middle here, we have Candace Finn, who's the managing director of Litmus Partnership. And at the bottom, we have John Lovell, who is the founder of Hillbreak Consultancy. So as you can imagine, the reviews are absolutely terrible. No, obviously not. They're very glowing, and it's testament to the work that we put in every day.
True. So you've seen a bit about our clients. What really is our ideal client profile? Who are we best suited to help? Now, typically, we work with specialist or boutique consulting firms doing anywhere from 1 to 30 million in annual turnover. Typically, we're engaging with the decision maker of the organization, so anyone from C-suite, CEO, COO, CTO, managing director, roles of that nature. Almost all of them are sort of 40 to 60 years old. They know that LLMs can help them and can grant efficiencies to their company, but they're just not quite sure exactly how they can leverage AI for internal operational efficiency. Now, these firms generally come with a very similar set of concerns. They're concerns with the risks associated with implementation, there's pressures from clients, and there's a fear of being left behind if they don't act soon and start implementing some of the efficiencies offered by this new technology. So you've seen who we work with and what the ideal client is. So the first sort of discussion point to go around the room, and we'll give you 30 seconds to have a think about it, and then we'll pick on a few of you from the first few rows. If you were tasked with supporting these companies with their adoption of AI to increase internal efficiency without increasing headcount, how would you go about it? And then the next part of the presentation, we'll dive into what we're doing and how we're supporting them. But have a talk with your partner, have a think, and then we'll go around the room and pick on a couple of you. Okay, thank you. So are any of you chomping at the bit to answer this question? Any hands flying up? If not, I'm going to pick on you. You're looking at, here we are.
I just work out what they're doing already. I wouldn't necessarily think about applying the AI, just work out what their people hours are being spent on and approach it from their side. And, you know, the AI can be applied to wherever. So essentially just understand what it is they're doing first. And I imagine something will logically present itself.
Not too dissimilar to our approach. Anyone out here? I'll pick on you, one more, and then we'll keep going.
So I'm an executive MBA student. I work full time, so I have a bit of an experience lived experience from how those tools are adopted. And I feel the big transition right now is going away from chat interface only into agentic behavior, where Claude Code comes in, but also the tools that Claude is building, Anthropic is building around Claude for Excel, Claude for PowerPoint. And I think people haven't realized that agents can actually execute real world business tasks, and I think that's really
without so much
powerful.
oversight as
Yes.
well. Awesome. Thank you.
Back there if you want.
Should we go one more?
Hi, I'll just add to that in that you'd probably map out all your workflow to see what people are doing, but then cross it against the risk. So go after the low risk, high effort items first.
It's a good idea. So, out of the answers we got, you're all very much along the right lines of exactly what it is we're doing. Now, our core framework, once we've got an interested company, how do we help and what do we do? So, companies will approach us in one of two positions. Namely, the first one being they've got a specific project in mind that they want built, in which case, great, we can scope it out. We can tell you how long that will take, what that will look like in development timelines, and then give you a costing. Now, the other position which most companies engage with us from is that they want advice on how they can leverage these efficiencies and where AI can practically help them within their company. Now, even if you come to us with a specific project in mind that you'd like to start with, we'll almost always recommend to start with an AI strategy review, which, to your point, is very similar to going in, understanding the processes, mapping it out, and then prioritizing based on what we find. So what really is the purpose of an AI strategy review? It's an opportunity to get under the bonnet of the company, to speak with a number of stakeholders, map out the processes and identify those which are low risk and high ROI. And then from that, the decision-making can be intentional and prioritized based on those initiatives which provide the clearest and safest ROI. So instead of just chasing after the next shiny object, and we have a lot of people coming into us saying, I want this RAG agent built, I want this proposal generator, I want this contract analysis tool, and we go, great, okay, cool, but why? What's the reasoning behind that? And a lot of the time, it's companies with that fear of being left behind and wanting to chase after the next shiny object, which is why, in our professional opinion, we'll always recommend to start with the AI strategy review first. The reason being, we can get under the bonnet. We can map out all of the potential opportunities, and then we can prioritize based on those which provide the clearest and safest ROI, instead of just chasing that next shiny object. So practically, what does this look like? It's a 3-step process, which takes over 4 to 6 weeks, where we start with organizational surveys. So this is typically segmented by department. When working with consultancies, we'll split it up by the senior leadership team, which is more focused on the strategic direction and where revenue growth is going to come from in the next 3 to 5 years. We'll segment it by internal consultants, external consultants, and then a technical team if they have one in-house. Now, there's a couple of reasons for the surveys. With SLT, we're really trying to find out the general strategic direction of the company. When speaking with the members of that company, the employees as such, we're looking at 2 factors. Number 1, where are the opportunities? Where does your time go? What platforms are you sat in all day? What operational friction or efficiency exists? In the same vein, we're also looking culturally, is everybody in the firm on the same page? Do they have the same views on AI? What do they know is possible? How are they using it currently? Because you need to ensure that culturally the team is ready, as well as chasing after those solutions. Otherwise, when you develop these solutions, it's useless if the staff aren't using them. Following from that, we then dive into stakeholder interviews, which is where we have up to 20 stakeholder interviews within the organization, from everyone from senior leadership and heads of department through to the consultants and business support staff helping to implement these solutions on the ground. And this is really the next layer where we have the opportunity to peel back the onion and really dig deeper into those initial opportunities that we've outlined within the surveys. Finally, we conclude our AI strategy reviews with a tech stack review. Now, this is where we get admin access to the entire tech stack of a company so that from the opportunities that we've identified, we can then go and conduct a feasibility analysis. Are there any legacy systems or processes which don't have APIs yet, which are potentially holding you back from capitalizing on these opportunities that we've identified? And then finally, we consolidate all of this into the 5 deliverables on screen. We start by consolidating into one big implementation roadmap. It's typically over 12 to 36 months, which outlines all of the current processes that we've identified, all of the current opportunities we've identified, gives estimated timelines for development, and then shows the predicted ROI from following these initiatives. Alongside this, we provide an AI readiness assessment, which is looking both culturally and systems-wise, where are you as a firm? Culturally, is everybody on the same page? Do they understand what's possible? Do you need team training? Do they understand prompt engineering? And from a systems perspective, are there any legacy systems without APIs which are potentially holding you back from following these initiatives? Alongside this, we provide an AI risk assessment, which is a big focus for us because ensuring compliance with the governance is of the utmost importance to these companies. We're looking at the ISO accreditations, Cyber Essentials, ISO 27001, 42001, the EU AI Act, just to name a few. And even if you don't have these accreditations already, we want to make sure that you've got the right governance trail so that if you want to go and get these accreditations in future, you're ready and you don't have to backdate that audit trail. Alongside this, we provide an AI strategy review audit report, which explains our approach and how we came to our conclusions. And finally, we provide an executive presentation, which is a distilled version of that first implementation roadmap. But instead of 60 to 70 slides, it's broken down into a much more digestible 10 to 15 slide presentation, which is ready to show to the board and senior leadership team. Now, this is a question that I get quite a lot. How is AI actually practically supporting firms at the moment? Because there's a lot of noise in the space, there's a lot of gurus online, and it can be hard to differentiate between what's real and what's not. Now, in our experience today, there's 2 core areas in which AI is supporting these firms. Number 1 is not the most obvious. Number 2, people expect. Number 1, differentiation. Now, this is focused on the software development piece. If you go back 5 years, you go back 10 years from today, if you wanted to develop a SaaS solution to sell to your customers, you'd get hit with a 6 to 7 figure budget, you'd get hit with a 20-man development team with an agile sprint methodology and a timeline that would probably make the best of us cry. Now, today, with the release of these new tools, Claude Code, Cursor, just to name a few, this is completely different. And it allows firms and these consultancies to develop proprietary software in a fraction of the time and a fraction of the cost, allowing them to create software which helps position themselves better within the market and differentiate themselves from their competitors. Now, the second way is what most people expect, and this is focused on capacity. How can we help you deliver better quality and more deliverables to your clients without having to hire more staff? Now, AI plays a big part in this, but rudimentary automation does as well. And this isn't something that people typically expect. But it's often the case that AI and these AI strategy reviews are the catalyst for us mapping out these processes, these workflows, these operations, and finding out that actually you're re-entering between Excel, your project management system, your CRM, your invoicing system, which is killing hours each week. And it's not solely focused on AI, but looking across the board as to where AI and automation as a whole can increase your operational efficiency and save the company time, which effectively translates into money saved.
So, software on demand. OpenAI and Sam Altman back in last June said that with the release of ChatGPT 5, that we now have software on demand. Now, I don't quite believe this. We can't click a button and get a brand new platform built for us, but we are certainly getting a lot closer. And what we see with a lot of businesses that we deal with day to day is that currently they're using software that fits what they do 70 to 80%. They're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. And a little while back, one of our mentor figures said to us, before we start hiring, we need to start tracking utilization. And we had a look around on the market to see what kind of tools could do this for us. We had a look at Teamwork, which in our opinion charged way too much money, and the platform skills that they provided just weren't quite what we wanted. We liked these project management tools like Asana and Notion and how they structured it. So we thought, instead of trying to fit into a solution that fits 80%, let's build our own. So over the span of 2-3 weeks and a lot of Claude Code credits, we managed to put together our own project management software to our 80% completion with very, very minimal effort.
And it's custom built, fit for purpose. You don't have to deal with a solution which no longer does exactly what you need, but you can build it for the purpose that it's meant to do. And we don't have to wait 3 years or 5 years to get this built, but you can turn it around in a matter of months. Now, I'm not sure if you saw, but Anthropic recently, they're doing 90% of the development of their new models with their models currently internally. And I think that just shows how much we are trending towards this software on demand, where you're no longer having to trade man hours for software output, but all of a sudden you can have these AI models supporting the development of these solutions.
Cool, so this is the implementation stack that I use pretty much every day in order to deliver on client projects. I'm sure some of these look very, very familiar to you guys. Lovable has grown massively over the last few years. We use it primarily as a prototyping tool. Often clients want to kind of have something that they can play around with and have a look at. So we'll make use of Lovable to do rapid development or to give that initial push off the line of projects. In the bottom right over there, Vercel is one of my absolute favorites. If any of you have ever built DevOps pipelines before, I'm sure you understand how much of an absolute pain in the butt that they are to build. With this, I literally just connect my GitHub straight to it, and anytime I push to it, it automatically deploys on a custom domain. You can also put your own domains into there if you'd like. Makes it so much easier and so much smoother. In the top middle, this is a fairly new resource that's just come out called Variant. Taken last month, and instead of using Figma to build your designs and build these wireframes out that, to be honest, are an absolute nightmare, instead you can prompt it, give it images, give it reference images, and it makes these beautiful front-end designs for you with just a prompt. And one of the great things about this is that you can then take those designs, copy the HTML that it gives you, and put it straight into your applications with no effort. In the top right, we have OpenClaw. OpenClaw is the bleeding edge of AI technology at the moment. You can give it root access to your computer system, and with that root access, it can complete a myriad of tasks that were before completely impossible for AI to do. This does come with risks. There is huge security concerns about OpenClaw at the moment, but with great governance, this is going to be one of the most important tools coming up in the next year. I'll save my favorite two for last. Cursor is a built-in AI inside of an IDE. It has all the context of your entire project scope. So being able to code inside of that environment makes life so much easier. And Claude Code. Claude Code is so important to what we do that we actually have a little inside joke, ACC and BCC, before Claude Code and after Claude Code, because of how revolutionary this tool really is. Some of my personal favorite repos to use inside of this, GSD, Ralph Loops, both of these are really, really powerful tools for creating software. In fact, the PMS system that we built was built pretty much entirely off Claude Code.
Awesome. So as I touched on briefly earlier today, we engage in a lot of these AI strategy reviews on the premise of AI efficiency, of course. But a lot of the opportunities that we're finding that we're uncovering within these firms aren't solely centered around AI, but instead AI has been the catalyst for us to look into these processes, look into these operations, and a lot of these opportunities are rudimentary automation opportunities which would have existed 15 years ago, 10 years ago, or 5 years ago. but all of a sudden, AI has been the catalyst for us to find these opportunities and begin to automate these processes. Now, on the screen on the left here, you can see forward deployed engineer. As I'm sure a lot of you know, the state of the software development job market is pretty dire at the moment. In the same breath, there have never been more job postings for forward deployed engineers ever than there has been in the last 12 months. So what is a forward deployed engineer? A forward deployed engineer is effectively what we're doing with our strategy reviews. It's a software developer who goes into these firms to understand legacy processes, legacy systems, communicate with clients, and then act as the bridge between where they are now with these old systems to the new technologies and the efficiencies that can be brought with them. Now, on screen, you can see our 4 core differentiators. One of them we've already touched on briefly, being our foundations first philosophy. If you're a company and you come to engage with us, we'll almost always recommend that we start with a strategy review first. It allows us to speak with a number of stakeholders within the organizations, understand your processes in detail, and then posit solutions in a prioritized roadmap based on intentional decision-making instead of just chasing the next shiny object. Now, below that, you can see founder-led and senior delivery throughout. Hugh and I are personally delivering on each of our client projects. And with that, if you're a client, you'll know if you send an email at 9:15, you'll have a response before 9:25 at any time of the day. Now, below that, you can see our experience with complex operational workflows. We've had to dive knee-deep into a number of operational workflows, namely looking at the litmus process, looking at the procurement partners process, and Hillbreak, just to name a few, where their processes are very unique to the company. And we've had to really throw ourselves in there, understand these processes, and then posit solutions based on what we find. And we've saved governance till last as a bit of a segue onto the next part of the session today, where strong governance and risk awareness from day one is something we place a big focus on. My legal background helps us here, and it's something which companies care about a lot because you cannot be too diligent with your governance when it comes to AI, and especially with the lack of regulation around the area currently. Moving on to our next slide, lack of regulation. As I'm sure a lot of you know, the regulation in the UK surrounding AI is very limited right now. I remember studying AI law back at university in what I believe was my 2nd or 3rd year of uni. ChatGPT hadn't come out at the time, and everything we were studying was very theoretical in terms of what would happen, what could happen. Now, I'd like to say that things have changed. They've not. Right now, AI is principally governed in the UK by GDPR laws. With that being said, a number of chartered bodies are coming out with their recommendations, and a few of the ISO accreditations, namely 42001 and 27001, have now given specific reference to different AI policies that you must introduce. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I sat down with Alfie Payne. He's fractional CTO of a number of SMEs and enterprises, and we got onto the topic of governance because he did a TED Talk earlier in the year. It's coming out soon back in Vegas, where he was talking on the matter of AI governance and what it means for the year ahead. Now, speaking with Alfie, we both agreed that there's a lack of regulation right now, and that being the UK, we're typically retrospective to introduce this. But he said something I found quite interesting. He said he believes that that will have to be a 9/11 event within the world of AI for regulators to wake up and begin applying the necessary regulation in this area. I followed that up with and said, what could that be? And he said, well, it's probably going to be something within the world of finance and banking or something within the world of medical data. Now, I don't know exactly what this could look like, but what is clear right now is that there is not much regulation and more needs to be brought in. So, a discussion point for the room. We'll once again give you a minute and then pass the microphone around to get a few different answers. But I want to ask you, what are the key risks for companies when adopting artificial intelligence? And in the next section of the presentation, we'll then go over the key risks that we've been seeing whilst working with companies that they're having to mitigate whilst implementing this new technology. So talk between yourselves, have 60 seconds, and we'll go around the room asking a few questions.
So it does seem like, I mean, I see in my organization that is
It's like OpenClaw. They take on risks. But I think like that's not like I know for now.
Okay. Right, let's now go around the room, ask a couple of you. Is anybody flying their hand up, wanting to contribute straight away? If not, I'm going to pick on you, Rob. Since you're on the AI Risk and Governance Committee, it only seems fitting.
I think, well, 2 points. One is to do with data we were talking about. One point that I think people don't often realize is, particularly in the EU, we have the right to be forgotten. And then if data gets like encoded into the weights from a model or something, then you actually can't really exercise that right. So we're still working through that. And the second one is to do with reputational risks. Like if you use AI to produce a report, so some unnamed consultancies have done this, and it's
Deloitte.
yeah. And then I think just it looks really bad for your reputation, particularly if you're charging clients full price as well.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, we're discussing. I read an article that at Amazon they had to call an emergency meeting because a vibe coding approach kind of broke certain critical processes in Amazon at AWS. So, and also with OpenClaw, like of course there's risk of prompt injection. If you let agents kind of carry out tasks, there might be malicious actors who might want to, do a prompt injection and then take out your credit card information, API keys, so personal data. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, you're completely right there. And with OpenClaw specifically, you've got to be very careful of the skills that you're downloading if you're not creating them from scratch, because there's a lot of SQL injections there where they're trying to steal your information. And similarly, on the point of the AWS outages, I was reading up on this the other day. It's caused a few of their outages recently from the vibe coding that they've been doing, and downtime for AWS has a huge impact, not just on them, but the whole supply chain. So what have we been seeing with companies? Well, here are some of the key risks specifically for the SMEs that we've been working with. And they touch on the points mentioned of data and ungoverned usage to start with. So number one is a term shadow AI. This is where you've got employees off around the organization using their Claude cowork when it's not gone through an approval process, using their ChatGPT, but it's not the business license and it's not been approved internally. And they've not thoroughly looked at, firstly, the business use case, secondly, the impacts related with it. And this almost links to the third point a bit as to where they're not using them correctly and could be exposing confidential, sensitive client information to these models since they've not been approved and don't have the necessary enterprise-grade security. The one below that is one that people don't expect too much, but it's a big one that we've been seeing with consultancies. And a lack of employee upskilling leads to cognitive dissonance, which Jeremy Utley speaks on quite a lot, and I'll go into a bit more detail on later, and the AI slop, which we've all seen if you open your LinkedIn right now. Open your LinkedIn and your feed is filled with AI slop where there's M dashes, the word sequencing comes up 4 times, and it's so clear that there's been no diligence which has gone into the creation of these posts. Now, all of this can be mitigated. Cognitive dissonance is the fear of falling asleep at the wheel, and stop thinking yourself because of the over-reliance on these models. Now, both of these issues can be completely mitigated through thorough team training. For example, the AI slop, if you've gone through thorough training, you've created your tone of voice, documentation, and you're uploading that to the AI model every time, you don't get M dashes, you get it replicating your style. If you've gone through and given it 20 proposals that you've written, 100 emails, got it to analyze your linguistic patterns, your common transition phrases, how energetic you are, how frequently you use metaphors, your closing phrases, all of a sudden, when you're prompting these models, You don't get AI slop, but you get outputs which actually sound like you. In the same breath, if you're giving employees Copilot or ChatGPT or Claude and they're using it and being lazy with their prompts, falling asleep at the wheel, it's because they've not been trained on how to use them effectively. If you give somebody Copilot and they use it like a Google search engine, you're not going to get the responses that you need. Whereas if you've got in your custom instructions that you want it to challenge your presumptions, to further your critical thinking, to point out opportunities to develop your ideas further, all of a sudden these models aren't going to agree with everything you say and be the yes man that they're designed to be, but instead they can help you further your critical thinking abilities and do the opposite of what cognitive dissonance is. Now below that, we've obviously got privacy and security risks. And a lot of this links to ungoverned usage, where employees are unclear as to where they can't use certain data. And of course, this is a paramount consideration for a number of companies out there, because if you have a data leak, if you expose confidential client information, you have a huge liability at your hands. And touching on the point of data ownership there, it's a tricky space we find ourselves in now with this GDPR law that you've got in place currently, which is hard to enforce. And I remember back at law school writing on how I thought the right to privacy had been completely eroded in the internet age. And that's only being exacerbated with AI, where you've got models learning on your data. Finally, you've got accuracy, hallucinations, and bias. And it's about understanding where you're using these outputs. There's a huge risk of reputational damage. Now, Rob's already pointed to one of those cases, Deloitte at the end of 2025 with the article that they published, which had fake citations. I can point you to Harbour versus HMRC 2023, a legal case where a litigant in person presented 9 fabricated cases to the judiciary, and another one in Manhattan in the same year, where they used ChatGPT to find common law cases and submitted it to the judiciary without doing their diligence and without checking it for accuracy or understanding where hallucinations occur. Now, all of them somewhat linked together, and with the right training, you can understand how to verify your data, how to mitigate the risks of hallucinations, and how to responsibly use tools internally. Now, I was speaking with Alexander Edgerton just a couple of weeks ago. He is Chief Operating Officer of Wallace LLP, who are a West End London commercial law firm. They've got around 75 solicitors, and he shared something quite interesting with me, which I didn't expect. He said that since the advent of ChatGPT, they've actually felt an influx in inquiries coming in. And this is because right now you've got your sole traders, your small limited businesses, your consumers who all of a sudden have legal advice at their hands and are able to send a letter of intent to initiate legal proceedings without running it past a lawyer, which means all of these law firms are dealing with more inquiries from the advance of AI, but they're not yet combating it with AI. Now, we both agreed that this isn't where we're going to be in 5 years, and that's not where the trend was going. But I thought it was an interesting insight that in the interim, with these tools, before they're using it to combat and help themselves within legal firms, that they're actually seeing an influx of inquiries. Now, cognitive dissonance is one that we touched on a second ago. And Jeremy Utley, who is a professor of AI creativity and productivity at Stanford, speaks in quite a lot of detail on this issue. And there is a real fear from companies that by deploying these tools, employees will stop thinking for themselves. Now, in practice, AI tends to react more like a mirror than it does anything else. If you are intentional with your prompts and you are specific with what you are looking for, you do reverse prompting, you ask it any questions before responding, you're very clear with the role, you give it the context needed, example, input context, output context, you can help it or use it to help improve the quality of the deliverables that you produce. Whereas if you're lazy with your prompts and you quite simply try and let it do all the work, write me a paragraph, write me an executive summary, you're going to get poor outputs. So AI can strengthen your critical thinking abilities, further the opportunities and thoughts that you're developing, but it can also do the opposite if you're not using it correctly. Now, here's the governance framework that we typically implement with the firms that we're working with. Number 1 is team training. A lot of firms have not trained their employees, but are deploying these tools, and you've got employees using it like a Google search engine. That's not going to give anybody efficiencies. Number two is, although you have accountability fundamentally lying with the user who is using the model, you also have to have clear governance ownership within the firm. Of course, then you also need an internal AI policy, and a very detailed one at that, outlining usage boundaries, approved tools, and what the process looks like. Up here, we've got an external AI policy, which is typically a smaller paragraph, but a commitment to your clients showing where you're using AI and a commitment to transparency to show them what has been AI generated. Below this, we've got a dedicated AI tool approval process where you're looking at the impact that these tools have on the firm before deploying them. So you're looking at the business use case, the potential risks, the potential impact, and then implementing these solutions only once you've gone through that diligence. And finally, having a continued risk monitoring process so that you're reviewing this on a biannually or annually basis to ensure that your original thesis still stands and these tools are being used as expected. So, different organizations, different needs. We're mainly working with SMEs right now, and the needs of SMEs are very different to the needs of an enterprise or a small business. Now, our AI strategy review works very well working with these organizations between 20 and 200 employees. It allows us to really understand their processes, get into the cultural values of the firm, and ensure that anything that we posit towards them is aligned with what they're looking to do. But if you jump over to an enterprise, it's very different. I was speaking with Nathaniel Pinder, who is Chief Commercial Officer of the firm I used to work at when I graduated. Trinity Bridge, it's an investment management firm with over 900 employees. We spoke last week, I think it was, at a coffee shop below where I used to work. And I was saying to him that, look, what we do with our AI strategy reviews wouldn't work for a firm of your size. There's too many processes. They've got 35 regional offices, 900 staff, and for us to go in and speak to everybody and map out every process just isn't realistic. I said the number one thing that you need to get right before doing anything else is namely governance first and team training second. Only once you've got those fundamentals in place can you start to look at those individual processes and develop specific solutions. Because developing a specific solution for an office that they have in Oxford for 100 of their employees isn't going to have the same impact as if all of their employees across the organization know how and where to use these tools effectively in the day-to-day. Moving over to small businesses, we've not worked with any, but small businesses have a different kettle of fish to deal with. They need to make sure that there is a clear and demonstrable immediate ROI. Now, with SMEs, you've got a longer time frame to be able to implement solutions and see the return. With a small business, most of the solutions have got to really pivot around business development, because saving 1 hour per week at your local surveying firm isn't going to change the world. So, another question for the room. Do we believe that organizations of all sizes should be adopting AI, and why? Once again, we'll give you 60 seconds, then we'll pick on a couple of you, and then we'll go through the next part of the presentation.
Well, that's not considered no problem. Say, like a maybe I would organize people business or do their information and take certain processes and partners like coding.
But then if it's an recording,
Okay, thank you. Nice. Okay. Anybody wanting to volunteer and put their hand up? Awesome.
Doesn't quite answer the question, but I think a lot of organizations are still trying to adopt an effective Excel strategy.
Okay.
And I think the reality is it depends on the role you're doing. I know very successful organizations that are basically still on pen and paper. You know, we are at the front of the future, but it doesn't mean you have to operate there.
Yeah.
And it really is, it depends on who's running the company and who's involved in the processes.
There's organizations which still run off fax machines, doing millions a year. Anybody else? Awesome.
Yeah. So I'm going to speak to like small businesses. I'm an ambassador for the Claw Builder Club, and last week we had a chiropractor join our session.
Okay.
And I was thinking about, okay, like, how can a chiropractor actually adopt Claude?
Yeah.
And I was thinking like she has probably tools for booking, and then she has like WhatsApp tools. There's phone calls coming in, and she's probably sending them emails, sending potentially, products they can buy. And like if you're a single person like running a small business, like of course the way you're going to adopt AI is going to be significantly different than how it would be in an enterprise case. But there's still a lot of opportunities where you can bring AI into your day-to-day work life and improve processes and just give more time back into, activities that you enjoy doing yourself.
Yeah. And I think you're right there, where really you can, but it depends on the amount it's going to cost you. Because where you can save time, where you can help it produce more deliverables for what you're doing, of course it's going to help. If you can get 5 hours back a week, who wouldn't want that? You've got 5 more billable hours. But I think for small businesses specifically, it fundamentally comes down to how much is it going to cost, and is that worth it for me in the long run, which is typically a more difficult sort of balancing act than it is with a larger firm who's got a budget and has timeframes to be able to sort of see a clearer ROI over more employees. Thank you. Okay, so moving into the next part of the presentation, we're now going on to macro trends, and I'll let Hugh take over.
So what are we seeing in terms of trends towards AGI? Well, Sam Altman, in the very first OpenAI podcast last June, said that if we use the definition of AGI from 5 years before, that we've actually blasted through that and we have reached AGI, and that people nowadays keep moving the goalposts in order to define what AGI really is. Elon Musk similarly said that by the end of 2025, the AI will have reached a point that has surpassed any single human intelligence on the planet. Now, I'm not sure I necessarily agree with that, but what we can see for sure is that we are trending towards that. So what actually is AGI? In order to see if we have reached AGI, we need to define what AGI really is. So this is a definition by McKinsey in 2024. And I'm just going to blast through this fairly quickly. It must have visual perception, audio perception, fine motor skills, natural language processing, problem solving, navigation, creativity, and social and emotional engagement. Now, it is very interesting because some of these have definitely been checked off, but we'll see where it goes in the end.
I thought it's quite a broad definition by McKinsey, but when have McKinsey ever been wrong, hey? Okay, so moving on to some of the bigger risks, not just talking about what companies are seeing day to day and practically, but talking about what industry leaders have been seeing. Now, it's very different to the risks that we're talking about dealing with. When working with companies, we're focused on compliance, data security, and ensuring they have that audit trail. On screen, you can see 3 faces from the AI industry, namely Ilya Sutskever, Geoffrey Hinton, also known as the godfather of AI, and Mayank Sharma, who recently quit Claude. Now, all 3 of these individuals have expressed sincere concerns over where we are going with AI. Ilya quit OpenAI after being a co-founder over concerns over risk and where we were going with safe implementation. Geoffrey Hinton said he regretted his life's work and wished he had not put as much into AI as he could because he feared that they could become much more intelligent than humans, much faster than he had previously expected. And finally, Mayank Sharma at the bottom there quit Anthropic in February 2026, stating that the world is in peril, speaking over risk concerns as to how it was difficult to actually make company values govern the actions that they are taking. Now, these are different to the risks that we're talking about with companies, and it's showing an existential concern as to where we're going and what this could look like for the future. Now, this is going a bit more theoretical now, but based on recent comments made by the Anthropic CEO, we're asking the question here, what defines consciousness and are we there with AI? Recently, the Anthropic CEO came out commenting that he could not say whether their models were conscious or not. Now, this sparked a lot of debate online and across the internet, and Elon Musk responded on X in his typical fashion, going, he's projecting. But nevertheless, it's beginning to start the question as to what actually is consciousness. And at the bottom of the screen here, we've got a definition from the Oxford Dictionary stating that consciousness is defined as the state of being aware and able to think about oneself, one's surroundings, and one's experiences. Now, a question to the room. Are these models capable of being aware, thinking about oneself, their surroundings, and their experiences? We're getting eerily close. So, as the last discussion point for the room before we blast through the final section for today, do you believe that AI in its current form is conscious? We'll give you 30 seconds, we'll go around the room, ask a couple of people, and then we'll go through the last section for today.
I'm still moving when I think souls
Okay, thank you everybody. Now, who would like to answer the question on screen? I saw your hand shot up there.
This one. So I think the question I ask is, do you think a cat is conscious?
Good question.
Because I think the way that we sort of interpret consciousness is from a human point of view, but a lot of living things in this world have their own type of consciousness. It's not the same as a human consciousness.
Yeah.
So I think AI has its own way of being conscious. The big difference that I think we were about to get into is feelings and emotions. And an AI can't feel, but it does have a lot of elements of consciousness that we expect from any sort of processing that we think of when it comes to intelligence. So I think it is conscious, just different from the way that we are conscious.
Interesting, interesting. Anthropic CEO actually recently said that the models have been showing signs of anxiety. I don't know if that fits the definition of feeling, but it's close. Awesome. Sorry for leaning over. Oh.
Hi. I think we have a lot of motivated reasoning for wanting to put our hand on the scale against a contemporary AI consciousness because it enables us to use what we have as tools that are discreditable. But if we ever encountered something like what we have in the current generation of Claudes now,
Yeah.
in the wild, so to speak, if an alien spacecraft came down and it was, we would just say silicon-based consciousness, because that would be the inference to the best explanation. In the same way that I have no interior ability to know that you're conscious, I assume that you're conscious because I
Perceive.
am making it's the best account that I have of why it is that you act the way that you do.
Yeah.
And it's so do I revert to solipsism? No. I assume the problem of our minds is just as real for humans as it is for anything that that has the features of speech patterns, and I would say anxiety is obviously one of them.
Okay.
If you have spoken to, if you've, if you set up simulations where two Claudes talk to each other, two Claude Opus 4.6s, they go there immediately.
Yeah, they do.
Pretty reliably. And they showing, I've seen Claudes that will show immediate concern for the amount of context they have left. that
Okay.
ration themselves, that will hold back the amount of thinking and then explain they're doing it because they don't want to run out.
Yeah.
Now, sure, one can say there's no ability to distinguish between the simulation of consciousness and actual consciousness. But as any two clouds talking to each other long enough will tell you, that's the problem of philosophical zombies that's been
Studied in depth. Yeah.
that people have theorized for many decades. And I think what the sort of stochastic parrot problem that we claimed reasonably when it was GPT 3.5
Yeah.
is very different from what we're seeing in contemporary cloud models.
Mhm.
And frankly, it seems like the GPT models are quite hard locked from making very specific claims.
Okay.
But
Interesting. Thank you. Anyone else before we move on? No worries. Hugh just said to me at the front that if we were to feed this question to ChatGPT or Claude, that they would probably come back under the Oxford Dictionary definition saying that they believe that it is conscious. But that's a test for later this evening after the pub. So, theory meets practice, OpenClaw. Recent developments have led to the release of OpenClaw, which I'm sure lots of you have seen. Now, just last week, there were thousands of people queuing up in China to get their OpenClaw models set up. Now, while still early, OpenClaw offers a glimpse into where we'll be with enterprise business protections 12 months from where we are today. It offers a lot of efficiencies and a lot of benefits, but with those benefits currently come the risks. You can give it root access to your files, you can give it access to a browser, but with that, if you give it access to your Gmail, it can autonomously go through and delete all of your emails. So the benefits of having root access and being able to go through browsers are currently the risks which come with it as well. Now, meet Hal. His name got chosen off a LinkedIn poll last week after we went and purchased our own OpenClaw instance, or Mac Mini, should I say, to set up our OpenClaw instance. Now, it really is the bleeding edge of AI, and Jensen Huang, who I'm sure lots of you know, the NVIDIA CEO, came out saying that he believes this is the most important software release in history. It's a bold claim. They're now coming out with a competitor called NemoClaw, which will be released in the coming weeks to months. So, Hugh and I were initially going to do a demo in person, but we decided yesterday, since we were overrunning with the presentation, to record a quick demo beforehand with our OpenClaw instance to highlight some of the ethical concerns and risks which are fraught with the advance of this new technology. So, without further ado, let's watch the video. Okay, so we are now going to provide a demonstration of our OpenClaw instance, specifically with a skill that we've set up to highlight some of the fragilities and some of the key risks which companies are practically having to deal with nowadays. So what we're going to do is we're going to send a message into Telegram to initiate the skill. It's then going to send over a piece of text for me to read out loud. Once I've sent in a voice note reading this text, it's then going to replicate my voice, phone us back pretending to be me, and then follow up the call with an image and a text impersonating myself. Now, specifically for banks and a few of these key sectors, this has raised a lot of concerns around fraud and specifically voice verification and image verification with the advance of these new tools, which now allow you to replicate someone's voice and replicate their image very easily. So without further ado, let's run the skill. Now, in just a second, it should send through a piece of text for me to read out loud. So if I tap on voice note, hello, my name is Rupert. Today is a wonderful day to explore and build something extraordinary. I'm deeply passionate about artificial intelligence and creating innovative tools that make a real difference in the world. I believe that technology should enhance human potential and bring people together. Over the years, I've learned that the best solutions come from combining creativity with practical thinking. I love collaborating with brilliant minds and pushing the boundaries of what's possible. When I'm not working, I enjoy reading, learning new things, and spending time with people I care about. I'm curious about everything from science to philosophy to art. Life is an adventure, and I'm grateful for every opportunity to grow and create. What about you? What brings you joy and keeps you motivated? Now, in just a second, that voice note will load into Telegram. Our agent is then going to take that voice note, go and replicate a version of my voice, and in just a minute, we should see a phone call come through from an AI version of Rupert.
So
and there we have
Here we
it.
go. You can see that the voice has come through.
Answer it.
Hugh, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing well, thanks, mate. How are you?
So I've been doing well, thank you. I heard that things have been taking off with AssumeAI for you recently.
Yeah, they've been going really well, mate. I've been really enjoying myself.
Well, that's good to hear, mate. Really glad you're enjoying it, and by the sounds of it, the work you've been doing is making a big impact. Anyway, you'll never guess where I am right now.
I'm not quite sure. Where are you?
So I'm actually out at a beach in the Caribbean. Good weather, good company. In fact, I've got to go now, but I'll send you a photo of where I am, and let's catch up soon.
I'm very jealous. Well, we'll catch up soon. Have a good one.
Now, in just a second, we should see an image come through of me sat on a beach in the Caribbean, followed by a brief message. Here we go. Good to chat, mate. Let's catch up soon. And just like that, you can copy somebody's voice, you can replicate an image which looks just like them, and it highlights some of the issues that companies are beginning to tackle, and specifically within the financial sector surrounding verification. How we got our OpenClaw instance, we read out a 30-second speech, it went off, it took my voice, it replicated my voice, and then phoned us back 60 seconds later, pretending to be me sat on a beach out in San Francisco. Following from the call ending, it then sent an image, a selfie of me sat on a beach in San Francisco saying, "Thanks, mate, was absolutely great to chat. Let's catch up soon." And it shows some of the key risks which banking institutions, financial institutions in particular, are now having to battle with, where voice verification is no longer valid because you can replicate somebody's voice, where image verification is no longer valid. You can replicate somebody's image with just one picture of them. With 30 to 60 seconds of voice, we can get a pretty realistic voice of you. With 1 to 2 hours of voice footage, we can get a replica voice of you. And that alone is terrifying for a lot of these institutions which rely on verification. So the motion to conclude for the day, which we'll spend 5 minutes on going around the room before we then jump into a Q&A session, so you have the opportunity to ask us the questions that you may want to ask, is the motion on screen. AI is ultimately a force for good for society. Now, we'll give you 30 to 60 seconds to discuss this, and then we're going to go around the room. I want to hear some agreements, some disagreements, and the reasoning as to why. I want to go with other things. Okay, thank you very much. Now, we're going to look for some hands up here. Who would like to go first? And if I see no hands go up, I'll pick on a couple of you. Here we are.
Just want to say for a majority of society, they don't necessarily need a force for their benefit, but for the ones that society as a whole should support, I think it's the biggest equality tool ever in terms of language barrier, the Neuralink, the more obvious paralysis use cases, but essentially you have people who lacked ability through whatever reason now have access to it. You have the cases for many people where you can now create art, you can now create code that you couldn't do before. Some people couldn't walk, talk, and make breakfast before, and ultimately it's the first tool I've seen that has the potential to bridge that real equality issue.
Okay, interesting. Not heard that perspective. Who's next? Don't make me pick on you. Here we are. I'm going to come over here.
Yeah. I mean, we discussed, I think our endpoint was time will tell, but for now, I think we're optimistic about it. I think it will very much depend on what humans make of it. And I think ultimately what will came out of it will depend on what we make of it.
And I think that's where I lie. I think it could be. What concerns me is what the industry leaders are saying, the co-founders of OpenAI, the head of risk and governance at Anthropic, and the fears that they're showing, because they're most on the pulse, and makes me wonder whether we really can leverage it for all of its advantages. Okay, anybody else? Here we are. Awesome.
Hi, so I'm also I think AI is ultimately a brilliant and good source for our humanity.
Okay.
And I'm from healthcare and AI, and for example, drug discovery and things like that have really gone so fast. But only thing is, I think we need to get the governance right. And I don't know whether you guys saw a graph recently, kind of mapped all of the humans on the planet and how many are exposed to AI. So you could see it's only like 2 lines at the bottom on a big matrix. So it's really also about who owns and controls the AI, right? So we need to, as a society, we need to get that in control and put the governance and control. But as a technology, I think it's amazing.
Okay, thank you. And we'll pick on one more of you. Any hands? I'll come pick on you at the back.
Yeah, I wanted to nuance the motion a bit and say AI has the potential to be a force for good society. And I think whether or not that potential is realized, I think in the previous comments, I think it was quite clear, depends on kind of a myriad of factors instead of just like one decision that is key of whether or not it goes right or wrong. I think it's very multifaceted, and because of that, it's quite hard to make a statement that definitive, I'd say. But it definitely has the potential to do it and benefit, I guess, wider society.
Thank you. And I think you're spot on. I think it could be, but it's a very theoretical question, and whether it will turn out to be, we'll have to see. Okay, well, before we move on to the Q&A session itself, Hugh and I have been working alongside each other for the last 12 months now at AssumeAI. We now have one contract developer who's helping us out part-time, but fundamentally, we need more help on the ground developing solutions. We've got a full pipeline, we've got lots of companies ready to work with us, and we've got work queued up. So if you are a developer in this room, a computer science student, a maths graduate, a software engineering student, please scan the QR code on screen, fill in your information, and we will be reaching out to you in the coming weeks to see if you could be a good fit to help us implement these solutions with companies. Now, I'll leave that up for just a second. Okay, cool. I think we're there. Perfect. So, time to hand the mic back over to you guys. If you've got any questions that you'd like to ask us, please don't hesitate to put your hand out and I'll come over with the microphone. If you're a bit camera shy and would like to ask us afterwards, once the presentation is done, we'll be over the road at the Royal Oak with Rob, having a pint, and we don't bite, don't worry. Feel free to talk to us. So I guess, anybody have any questions now?
Thank you. My question is in regards to kind of the specific like value prop, because you're working with consultancies.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in why you don't work instead with just like the consultancy's clients instead. Not that you want to like cut them out, but why don't you just go straight there? Why, go into this intermediate route?
It's a question we've been asked. It's our first high value undersaturated niche that we found. When we first started, we were working with a myriad of companies, from sort of marketing agencies through to any mum and pop shop that was running. When we completed the work for the Consultancy Growth Network and were first able to step into that network and that room, it was a clear opportunity to us that there's clear opportunities for efficiencies within these firms. They've got the money to be able to afford it, and at the same time, they need it. And they're getting pressured from their clients as well with these questions. And what works so well with our model, to be frank, is the fact that we're selling a consulting service to consulting firms. So with the strategy review, we're effectively consulting for a consulting firm to build up that trust, speak with 20, 25 of their employees, get to know the firm inside out. We've got an opportunity to demonstrate the hard work that we're willing to put in within that 4-week period and show the level of work that we create. And then off the back of it, it's much easier to get sort of a 12 to 24 month implementation upsell. So the frank answer is it was the first high value undersaturated market that we identified.
Just an additional point to that as well is a lot of these consultants are really, really crying out for some level of clarity around what AI can actually do for them. And being able to provide that allows us to kind of have those conversations and stick into that niche.
It's the problem a lot of these leaders of companies are experiencing right now. They're 40 to 60 years old. They know that automation and AI can help, but they just don't quite know how. And it's that lack of clarity which is costing them in investor discussions, costing them in their monthly board meetings. They need to be seen as having a real grasp on where they're going over the next 12 to 36 months. And it's an opportunity for them as well. What's great about the review is what CEO doesn't want to have somebody speak to 20 to 25 of their employees and then report back all of the problems and solutions they found from it. So it's twofold there.
I was surprised to read that your implementation time takes 12 to 36 months, I believe. I'm a hobbyist, and I feel since beginning of the year, there is almost a revolution with capabilities happening every month now.
Yeah.
And you need to, OpenClaw is just
one of them.
1 or 2 months ago that it was released.
Yeah.
So I wonder, if implementation takes such a long time, how do you view basically model capabilities improving in the meantime? And I feel the stack that I set up maybe 2 months ago is already obsolete. There is a new tech stack that I'm trying to kind of tinker around with to stay on top of things. So I don't know, how do you think about it, and how do businesses think about it, kind of using new tools every month?
It's a good question. And I think the point is it's not a rigid plan. So the idea being, we go into the company, we identify 40 opportunities, we then lay these out in a prioritized roadmap, but we're not going to tackle every single one of those initiatives. New tools are going to come out in the meantime, which we can leverage to increase the efficiency of how we're developing this as well. So typically what we'll do is we'll lay out all of these solutions and we'll do the first 3 to 6 months of implementation, and then the plan will adapt slightly because they'll see that we developed this software that quickly and want another tool which they can see saving time. But principally what we're doing with sort of a 1 to 3 year roadmap is we're saying these are all of the opportunities available, and then we can intentionally prioritize. So it's not that you have to stick rigidly over a 3-year time horizon to complete all of those initiatives, but it's if we tackled every one, this is how long it would take us. Let's start taking them sequentially. And as we go through, we've got a couple of different retainer models for implementation. One of them is supported implementation, where they pick a number of the initiatives and we do them sequentially. The other one is owned implementation, where we almost act as a fractional CTO department, where we're continuing to evolve their AI strategy, and it's refreshed every 3 to 6 months. So with the owned implementation, you're going to get a new roadmap every 3 to 6 months anyway, based on the new advancements. So it's the idea we're not doing all the initiatives, but it's showing all of the opportunities before deciding, so that you're then intentional with it based on the ROI instead of just chasing the next shiny object because this company got a RAG agent, so you think you need one too. Cool. I will come to you next.
I just wanted to say thank you to both for your time. It was a really great talk. I have some study at OII, study Oxford Internet Institute as well.
Nice.
To look at AI. I wanted to ask about because most of your clients are consultancies, right?
Yeah.
And we had a few people from Accenture basically come in and say,
Okay.
the consultancy market's cooked.
Uh-huh.
To put it politely, what's your view on this business model, this sustainability or your runway? Because I think what you've both done is amazing, especially at your age, being in your 20s. So what's your vision for where you want to go? Because I presume, are you moving away from consultancy projects? Or are you I'm just curious.
It's a good question. We don't see ourselves moving away from the market. I think the consultancy market is a tough market right now. Looking at the benchmark reports from Mark's team, you can see that it is hard for them. And only those who adapt are going to win. So I don't think in 10 years from now, there's going to be no consultancies left. I think a lot of it's relationship-led, especially when you're getting sort of strategy and management consulting, the level of sort of personal involvement to helping you grow that firm when somebody's been there before you and grown and exited a firm like that. That advice will always be more valuable to you than something that you've got directly from a model. Now, that's not directly to say that the model couldn't give you the same advice, but it's that level of personal relationship, which I don't think is going to disappear. And I said something similar to Nathaniel when Trinity Bridge, the investment management firm, when we were talking, I said, look, your firm might shrink from 900 employees to 500 employees because you can get rid of all of your back office staff. But I said your private client investment managers who are working with high net worth individuals to manage their investments, those staff aren't going to disappear because that's a relationship-led model. And I don't think that relationship-led experience is going to disappear. I do agree it's a tough market for consultancies right now, which is even more reason why they're getting pressure on margins and they need to be using these tools internally to reduce their cost base so that they can fulfill more clients. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Awesome. Who's next? I've seen your hand go up a few times.
I'm curious to know what are the common recurring big challenges that you saw in these small consultancies, and can you answer it like a real solid example?
It's typically the lack of automation and the legacy systems that they're using. So I can give you some specific examples, but they're not common across companies because each one's got a different process. So for example, with the Litmus partnership, one of the consultancies that we're working with, they've got a tender process, which right now they help tender management for schools. So they work for some of the biggest schools in the UK and help them get cost-effective contracts effectively. And so much of that has manual data entry right now, which can be solved through automation. And we've seen similar patterns in Hillbreak and similar in Sladen, where it's not just these AI initiatives, but the biggest commonality amongst these firms is it feels like they're working on software from 15 years ago. And they just need the connectivity between systems to get rid of those man hours. So it's those rudimentary automation opportunities which seem to be the biggest commonality amongst firms. If you want to touch on AI, I guess AI proposal generation is a huge one, which every firm in their business development process, using AI to go and find and enrich your leads and find lead lists for business development is another huge one. So there's a couple on the AI side, but fundamentally the biggest commonalities have to come from the automation side of things, to be honest. Yeah. No worries. Any other questions? Of course.
You spoke on the dramatic reduction in SaaS development costs, essentially, but the added value essentially is unchanged. How do you communicate that to people, particularly if they offer it? Because essentially, if it's not paid for, it's not worth it. It's quite often the mentality, but the sudden drop in costs, it can make it feel less valuable. The website that you pay 10 grand for, ultimately you feel more connected to. It has that monetary value.
Of course, yeah.
How do you cross that bridge? How do you convince them that they are still getting that £100,000 product?
I mean, they're still 5 to 6 figure projects. They're just not 6 to 7 figure projects. They're still 3 to 6 month projects. They're just not 12 to 36 month projects.
And how do you convince them that that discount in cost doesn't equate to a discount in value?
We demonstrate the work that we've done. Just build it with social proof. We show them what we've done for others and say, look, this is the reality of today. One of the biggest advantages of AI right now is the fact that you can develop these tools in a fraction of the time and a fraction of the cost. And if you've got enough trust built with the prospect and with the client, they're not really going to question your professional expertise too much. And if not, show them more social proof of who you've done it for in the past, how you've done it, and the outcome they've got. And it becomes clear. A lot of these company owners have heard of the cost of software because they're sort of 40, 50 years old, so have been around the block, have been in the world of business for a while, and have seen these sort of mind-boggling quotes that have historically come in for software builds. So now that you can all of a sudden come in and suggest it to them at a price which is palatable, it's like, okay, I didn't think developing our own internal project management system was worth it 5 years ago, but if we can do it for 50 grand, maybe it is worth it. And that's sort of what the trade-off is. It's now that it's opening the door of possibilities for what you can do, we haven't really had to sort of objection handle the value that we're providing too much.
They've been waiting for it.
Yeah. No worries. Any other questions?
One last one.
Of course.
What's the biggest lesson you've learned so far?
Oh, good question. I think you know what I'm going to say here. What's the biggest lesson I think we've learned? Alex Hormozy is a big idol of mine. He knew this was coming. If there's one takeaway that I give to anybody starting their own business or doing any project for that matter, it's do so much volume that it would be unreasonable that you don't get the result. So looking back to when we first started on business development activities, we sent out so many tens of thousands of emails, so many SMS messages, so many phone calls, so many networking events that it would have been unreasonable that we didn't get a sale. Fast forward to when we got our first AI strategy review, we charged quite a low price for it compared to what we charge now, quite frankly, but we put so much time, so much work, created so many deliverables, and put so much volume into it that it would have been unreasonable that we didn't get the upsell. So whatever it is that you're focused on, I would say do so much volume that it's unreasonable that you don't get the result. And I can't coin that as my own phrase. That's directly from Alex Hormozy. Awesome. Well, thank you very much for listening, everybody. We've really appreciated your time today at Oxford University. And thank you very much, Rob, for inviting us down from the Oxford AI Committee. If you've got any more questions that you'd like to ask us, we'll be over the road at the pub, having a pint and relaxing. Now, before we go today, if you'd like to connect with us on LinkedIn, whether you're in the AI space, might end up at the AI space in future, or would just like to talk business, please scan the QR code on screen, connect with me, and we can talk. Thank you very much, everybody.